He's sitting in his car during lunch break, tablet in his lap, e-signing closing documents while Slack notifications from his job ping in the background. His full-time job salary is $62,000. And now, he has a new rental's monthly cash flow, $320. Vacation days used to pull this off? Zero. He didn't quit his job or flip houses on HGTV, but he still bought his first rental property while working 40 to 50 hours a week. So, here's the question that probably brought you to this video. If lenders want 2 years of job history, agents only answer during business hours, and you barely have free time, how do you actually buy a rental without blowing up your career or your life? That's what we're going to answer today. In the next 15 minutes, you'll see the exact strategy, schedule, and deal structure that let a regular W-2 employee become a landlord without going all in or quitting their day job. Let's get into it. Let me show you a day in the life. Commute, morning meetings, lunch at your desk, kids' activities after work, and late-night emails you didn't finish during the day. And overlaid on all of that, the classic lines. I don't have time. My boss would never let me leave for showings. Or, I'll invest later when work calms down. But here's what nobody talks about openly. Lenders generally want to see about 2 years of stable employment. They use your debt-to-income ratio and job history to decide whether to approve your mortgage. That can make your job feel like both a requirement and a prison because you need the job to qualify for the loan. But the job feels like the main thing stopping you from chasing deals, managing contractors, and meeting with agents during banker's hours. This is the emotional conflict our protagonist was stuck in. He couldn't quit because he needed the income to qualify, but he couldn't move forward because the job consumed all his time. So here's the mission for this video. What if you learned to use your job as a financing source and built a rental plan that fits inside 5 to 10 focused hours a week? That's the game we're about to play. Let's flip the mindset right now. Your job is not the enemy. It's the fuel that gets your first rental done. Here's how lenders actually view a stable W-2. Underwriters love predictable, documented income. 2 years of steady work in the same field is often enough to count your full salary with just W-2s, pay stubs, and employment verification. Now let's clarify the myths around that 2 years number. It's usually about work history in a field, not necessarily 2 years with the exact same employer. Job changes within the same profession can still be acceptable when supported by documentation. Here's why this matters for your loan strategy. W-2 income is the most straightforward income type for lenders to use. Quitting to go self-employed often hurts your ability to qualify because many banks then want up to 2 years of self-employment tax returns showing consistent profit. Which means the moment you quit your job to chase real estate full-time, you've potentially locked yourself out of conventional financing for 2 years. So here's the curiosity hook that reframes everything. The question isn't, how do I escape my job to invest? It's, how do I design a first rental that my lender, my calendar, and my energy level can all actually support? Our protagonist didn't start by scrolling Zillow at midnight falling in love with properties he couldn't afford. He started by talking to lenders. Step 1. He booked calls with 2 to 3 lenders after work. Learned what he could qualify for based on salary, debt-to-income ratio, credit score, and work history before he ever toured a property. This is reverse engineering. You find out what the bank will approve, then you build your search inside that box. Step 2. He learned what underwriters actually care about. Employment continuity, debt-to-income limits, usually maxing around 43 to 50% depending on the loan program, credit history, and cash reserves. Often, 2 to 6 months of expenses is preferred, especially for investment properties. Step 3. He avoided the moves that sabotage approval, like changing jobs right before applying, switching from salary to commission, or taking a brand new side gig that looks inconsistent on paper. All of these trigger extra scrutiny or require longer income documentation timelines. He consciously delayed risky changes until after closing. Step 4. He chose the loan type that fits a busy professional, a straightforward conforming loan. Or if house hacking, an owner-occupied FHA or conventional loan on a small multi-unit, nothing that demanded mountains of extra documentation or introduced unnecessary risk. Keep the process simple when you're doing this around a full-time job. The lender emailed a pre-approval range. $200,000 to $275,000 based on his income and debts. That range became the box he had to play inside, and knowing that box before he started shopping saved him months of wasted time looking at properties he could never close on. Here's the constraint we're working with. Our protagonist has maybe 5 to 10 discretionary hours a week. But here's what real-world investors say when you ask them how they bought rentals around full-time jobs. They stacked short-time blocks. Say, for instance, 20-minute tasks during lunch, evenings after the kids went to bed, and one weekend morning for showings. Here's how you can achieve that. Step 1. Build the supporting cast. He interviewed and hired an investor-friendly agent willing to do showings on evenings and weekends and communicate almost entirely digitally. He also interviewed property managers before he even had a property, because once he closed, he wanted the rental to be nearly hands-off from day one. Step 2. Time block a realistic weekly rhythm. He set aside 2 weeknights for deal analysis and email communication with the agent and lender, 1 lunch break for quick calls that couldn't wait, and 1 weekend morning for property tours and neighborhood drives. That's it. Roughly 7 to 8 hours a week. Step 3. Smart property criteria for busy people. He didn't chase the worst house on the block that needed 6 months of sweat equity. He targeted rent-ready or light cosmetic properties that wouldn't require nights and weekends of DIY rehab. A boring, solid 3-bed single-family or small duplex in a working or middle-class neighborhood with strong rent demand and modest maintenance needs. Let's walk through the actual property. 3-bedroom single-family in a solid working-class neighborhood. Good school district, low crime, and strong rental demand. The purchase price was $195,000. with a down payment of 20% on an investment loan. That's $39,000. The estimated mortgage payment, including principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, was $1,100 a month. Expected rent? $1,450 a month. Conservative allowances for vacancy, 10%. Maintenance, 10%. Property management, 10%. Net monthly cash flow after all expenses was roughly $320. Not life-changing, but positive and stable. And it qualified him as a rental property owner. Here's how the lender and job intersected at underwriting. The lender calculated his debt-to-income ratio using his W-2 salary, then layered in the new property payment. And because this was an investment property, they were allowed to count 75% of projected rental income to offset that payment in his DTI calculation. His job made him qualify. The rental income made the numbers work. Our protagonist was also keen with delegation. He hired a property manager from day one, 8 to 10% of gross rent. He accepted that fee in exchange for preserving his evenings and keeping the rental nearly hands-off around his job. But 3 weeks before closing, the lender requested extra documentation on his employment and a verbal verification of employment form sent to his HR department. For a brief moment, he worried his boss would see it and ask questions. HR processed it as routine, and the deal moved forward, but that moment of fear was real. And it's part of doing this while still employed. Let me show you what almost derailed this. First off, schedule collision. A critical property inspection was scheduled at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, same time as a quarterly business review meeting he couldn't miss. He had to delegate the inspection entirely to his agent and inspector, trusting their eyes instead of being there himself. It worked, but it required letting go of control. Then there's fatigue and overwhelm. He analyzed 43 properties over 4 months. Only 6 were worth touring, and only 2 penciled out after running real numbers. 1 fell apart during inspection. The other became his rental. Of course, there's fear of being found out at work. For example, what if he was caught making calls with lenders and title companies from a quiet conference room? Sometimes worrying colleagues would question his focus or commitment to the job. Let's talk about lender uncertainty. Not every lender said yes right away. One bank was overly strict about his debt-to-income ratio. Another wanted more reserves than he had. A third was willing to work with his W-2 and strong application. He got the house. Here's what made this possible. First, his employment timeline. 2 years and 4 months of consistent W-2 income at the same company. That's what the lender underwrote. Before, it was just his salary hitting his bank account. That's it now. He's getting a salary plus rent deposit each month, $1,450 from the tenant. Minus mortgage, expenses, and management fees, $320 is landing in his account. This is not enough to quit, but enough to prove the model works. I'll leave you with 3 questions to sit with. 1. How much could you qualify for right now if you talk to a lender this week based on your current W-2? 2. Could you protect 5 to 10 hours a week for 3 to 6 months to find and close one rental? And lastly, what would it feel like to see rent deposits hitting your account every month while you're still clocking in at work? That's it for now. Leave a comment below and see you in the next one.